Alrighty, so we got our Chapter 8 project here, so let's get right into it. So this is the custom application. I decided to do just an advanced project this chapter here. So this is the Create Your Own Application Advanced 3-star project. So I decided to make a hotel reservation application. And it actually turned out to be a lot of fun to make. The book didn't really go into a whole lot of detail on time pickers, so that was fun to learn along the way as well. So over here we have a graphical preview of what my layout looks like, and this is a custom layout here. I've got the XML for it right here. So we start out, we have our linear layout. Really, we have a linear layout inside of the relative layout. And we've got different properties here for this linear layout. Now we have an image view, and this linear layout is everything we see on the screen here. But the image view here is this hotel image to the side. Right here is like one of those Hilton hotels or something like that, found it online. And I have a link for it, as well as a link to the icon that I used, and a sources.txt file that I'll upload to this project. Probably the original images too. But it's the way these properties work. It will make it basically display on the side of the screen and then be as tall as the screen. And this is designed right here. This is what we're looking at is the Nexus 10, which is also the emulator that I'm running it in. So let's see. And these are actually linked to the strings.xml file. For some reason it just tries to preview the text in strings.xml. Kind of bugs me, I see that, but that's how that so that is in the strings.xml file. It's not just written in, and we'll look at that in a second. But we have our image view here, so we've already pretty much covered that. Now what we've got is basically a table layout, and we have our table layout is this little almost like a panel here on the side, next to, or really it's the right side of our screen here, and each item is a row in this table. So we've got right here, this is our header and our title, I guess is how I called it there. And then we have down below it we have like a description paragraph, and I wrote up just a neat little paragraph kind of for the fictional hotel there. So then kind of just a description of what the hotel is. Then we have a table view, or another table row here. This is our first button. It's the time button. There we go. Indentation gets a little messed up on these XMLs. Yeah, so that's our time button, and then this is the call it the actual date button here. Alright, and then below here we have a text field, and this is the text reservation field. This is where the date and time of the reservation will be displayed. Initially I had ordered this in the date where it was like date and then time, but I ran into a pretty weird bug with my code, and I had to actually alternate the buttons to where this one the time button came first, and I had to force the user to use the time button first and then the date button, because of a bug that I'll kind of look at in a little more depth when we look at the code. But that covers the layout. Got that there. I do have a custom icon for it. I guess we'll look at that whenever I run it. There was one thing to note in the Android manifest file, and that is right here where I added a property to the activity, and I said that I changed the screen orientation to landscape, because this application is not meant at all to be run in a portrait mode. It just looks terrible, so I forced the user to run it in landscape mode on their tablet. So right here we have our strings.xml file. This contains the application name, as well as all of the text here. This is the description text for the hotel image, and then we have our title, our description of the hotel, and then the text for both the date button and the time button. That should be about everything we need to cover as far as layouts and XML. So then, well, let's take a look at the code. Took a little bit of code to get this thing working. So right here we've got a couple different things. First off, we have some class level variables up here. We've got a text view variable that references our text reservation control, and that's so that because we have to access that, I think we have to access it in multiple methods. But at some point I did, but it's a good idea to make it class level anyways. Right here, scroll up a little bit more. So we create a calendar here called C, and this is definitely used all over the place. And we get an instance of the calendar object. And then right here we create a new, we create a reference to the date format object called format date. And then we also add a reference to the date button. And this one's also used quite a bit in different places in the code. 1 second and pause the video. No, maybe I won't. Yeah, I won't, because of the text reservation button actually. No, I think I will. Yeah, that was going to bug me to death for a second, so I just had to pause it and take a closer look at it. So it actually does need to be class level because it is used in more places. Right here we have, there's one place in particular. It is the this is the on-click listener for the time button, and that has to do with partly with that glitch that I was talking about, and it has to clear out the text in that control in case the user wants to make another reservation, or I guess change the reservation. So it does need to be used there and in this method somewhere here. Alright, so let's jump back in here. So we've got some more variables. We have a date button, and then this Boolean variable here, or Boolean, just pronounce that Boolean variable PM. And I guess it's not technically PM, but I'm using 24-hour time. And the way that it was being formatted for some reason is that the Java was basically trying to make it 12-hour time. But I was having a lot of trouble getting AM or PM. So I decided to get it to report it in 24-hour format, but then it kept displaying it as if it were still 12-hour format. So PM just represents the time after, after 12 o'clock noon. But the way I checked that was that if the hour was greater, well, look at that. Rambling on this one. Sorry about that. But let's see. So we've got our onCreate method. The first thing we do, we hide the action bar, just because I didn't want that in my layout. And then we reference the text reservation control, and we also reference the date button and the time button. And the time button didn't need to be class level, but the date button did. Now, right here, we disable the date button, and I guess I might as well cover that that glitch. So what was happening is that the first date would be messed up for some reason, and it had something to do with the way that the time picker dialog was affecting the date on the calendar. So I would go in, I would select a date, and I would say say April 10th, and then I would change the time to 1800. But what would happen is that for some reason that changing that time would increment the day, so then it would report the time as April, or the reservation as April 11th at 1800. And I think the time might have even messed up and said that would be 6 o'clock in the morning. So it would say April 11th at 6. So it was doing some funky stuff. Somehow that time value was almost being, I don't know, somehow it was adding itself to the date. But it was a lot of weird stuff, and I couldn't figure out a real way to figure out exactly what was going on or to prevent it and continue using the whole date time thing. So instead, I discovered that by setting the time first and then setting the date, that there was no problem. So I went ahead and changed that and forced the user to set the time first and then the date anytime that they do this. So there's no way they can set the date and then the time. They have to set the time and then the date, and that prevents that bug from happening. So that's the reason for this. So at the very start of the program, when we're setting up all this stuff, we disable the date button. So it'll be grayed out. We set enable defaults. So that means it's grayed out and unclickable. And now here we add a click event to the date button. So what this is going to do, this is going to display a date picker dialog, and it's going to it's going to reach out to the calendar object and get today's date right here, and it's going to display that, I guess. And then this is the time button on click listener. So right here we set the text reservation controls text to just an empty string. The reason for this is that if, say, the user had already done this once and they had April 12th at 6:30 and they wanted to set another reservation, the actual code to display that reservation doesn't happen until they set the date. So what would happen is that they would set the time, but the old reservation would still show, and it was just a little cluttery, kind of confusing for the user. So I decided to remove the old text if they clicked on the time button and selected a new time. But right here we have to store the hour of the day, the current day there, in the hour variable, and we have to store the midden in the midden variable. The reasoning for that, there was something else. There's kind of a lot of bugs with this one that I had to work around. It wouldn't let me actually use this bit of code right here directly in this method. It kept throwing an error and saying I couldn't access it here. So I had to store it in an integer variable first and then display it here. I even tried casting it as an int, but still got problems. So I just decided to pull it out here. But we create a new time picker dialog right down here, and we pass it the hour and the midden, as well as this right here, this T, and there's a D here, and those are the names of the onset time and onset date events. Alright, so let's see. There we go. What else we need to do? So much stuff to look at in this one. That should have those two on-click listeners. There's a little bit more going on in this one than the first one. So right here, this is the onset date listener, D, which is passed with the date picker dialog. So whenever the user selects a date, this will run here, and we will set the calendar's date here, this calendar selected date, to year, month, and day of the month. And then we will also check to see if the time is PM, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But if the time is after 12, if it is PM, then we'll display the time here by saying reservations made for plus format date.format, and then we get the current time. So that's going to give us today's date, month, or the day, month, and year of the reservation. And then we'll say at, and then we'll get the hour from the calendar. And since it's PM, we add plus 12. That way it shows up in 24-hour time. And then we add a colon and then the midden. So that'll display that correctly. Let's see, now right here what we would say, if the time is AM, so that's else, we will we'll do the exact same thing as this line here, but we don't add a plus 12. That way it just shows up as AM time. And then here the date button will disable itself. That way if the user decides to go back and set another reservation, that they can't set the date before the time and cause that bug. And I am almost out of time, so I'm going to have to roll this over into another video.